Hey guys, it's MJ, and in this video I want to talk about how to take advantage of institutional investment restrictions. So what's happened in the world is there's these things known as pension funds. Okay, pension funds and other mass saving funds or schemes or something like that. The idea is that these corporations or these trusts or these legal entities have a lot of money given to them. So with pensions, people are giving them monthly, part of their salary, and so they have a lot of money under their management. How much money? Well, we're looking at something like trillions and trillions of US dollars. So, I mean, I don't even know what comes off the trillion in terms of South African rands, but it is absolutely massive. And what you have is you have these pension funds that have certain managers who need to look after or invest this money. Now, this is a lot of money, and there is something that haunts the human race, and that is something known as greed. And what this does is, I mean, if you're a pension manager and you have trillions of dollars under management, you could just imagine the amount of power or position that you have in society. Every single person who wants money is going to be whining and dining you, and you're going to feel like an absolute superstar. Also, you have the money to determine which projects go ahead and which projects don't go ahead. You basically control the world, hashtag Illuminati. Now, we don't want this. We don't want the pension fund managers to control the world. Reason being is that they might put their self-interests ahead of everybody else's. They might become greedy, invest in their own businesses, invest in their friends' businesses, invest in risky things. So what we do is we've come up with investment restrictions. Okay, so we've pulled in these restrictions and we have sacrificed a little bit of efficiency for security. And that's a key thing about these restrictions, is that they decrease efficiency, but they increase security. Okay, now why do I say decrease efficiency? Yes, it's very good that they decrease the likelihood that pension fund managers, waste the money and do, act recklessly, but it also removes their ability to chase the highest return and to, chase the best assets to invest in. Because what happens is that these restrictions start saying what you can and what you can't buy, and they start becoming very strict, and they become very much, prescriptive. This is what you can invest in and stuff like that. Which means, I mean, pension fund managers are probably going to be the first financial job to be replaced, or, higher job to be replaced by artificial intelligence, in the sense that it will become automated. You tell the machine 60% in bonds, 40% in equity, go in the index, pension, go in the bonds, bam, done. We don't need our asset manager. And I think people will feel a lot safer if a computer is managing trillions and trillions of dollars rather than a human that can, fall under greed. But like what has been the theme of this chapter that we've been going through is every time regulation introduces a rule to clamp down on something or to achieve its goal, it does create these things known as consequences. And that's what I want to talk about in this video, is I want to talk about how to take advantage of the consequences, or how other people have taken advantage of the regulatory consequences. So we know that the regulation has got good intentions. It aims to, prevent abuse, increase security. It has all these things where basically security and to reduce greed, prevent abuse, people's money is safe. But it has these consequences that it reduces innovative investment. You can't buy into Bitcoin or cryptocurrency or anything like a little bit different because we don't know about it. So it is going to reduce innovative investment, but it's also going to introduce market inefficiency. And yeah, like I said, that's what what we're going to want to talk about. I actually made a video on this, I think it was around last year. It wasn't a very popular video, but it was a video on Japan and the negative interest rates. Okay, negative interest rates, I mean, it's absolutely insane. What a negative interest rate means is that I will give you 100 Rand, and a year later, you have to give me back 99 Rand. And there's still the risk that I might not give you back the 99 Rand. And, so it's very, very counterintuitive. But Japan is able to do this, introduce these negative interest rates on its bonds, because there is an investment restriction that says something like 60% has to be invested in bonds. And specifically say in Japan, it could be in local bonds. So what happens is basically supply and demand, like we've been saying this whole time, supply and demand is that there is such a big demand for Japanese bonds. I mean, the demand is so huge, because think about it, you're getting trillions and trillions of dollars and you have to put it in local bonds. I mean, there's these asset managers, their hands are tied, they have to put it in the demand. But the supply is very limited. So what happens? Well, the price of these bonds reduces. It reduces so much that it becomes negative, in the sense of this negative interest rate, which means what these asset managers are doing is they're having to give over, say, hundreds and hundreds of millions and receiving only, say, 99% of it back after a year, which is crazy, but they have to do it. They have to buy the local bonds due to investment restrictions. And the investment restrictions are there to overall prevent abuse. Why do you want to prevent abuse? Because you want to protect the consumer. So a lot of regulation is there to protect the consumer. But now, this consumer is investing his money in pensions so that he has enough money when he comes to retire. But by putting his money into a pension that has all these rules and restrictions to protect him, asset managers have to invest in local bonds that have negative interest rates, which means the poor pensioner is going to get less money when he comes to retire. And so it would have been better for him not to invest in the pension at all. And this is something that is causing a lot of chaos in the financial market, because pensions are failing. Because what's happened is Japan, or the local governments, are the first people to take advantage of these investment restrictions. It's like saying, oh, you have to buy my product? You have to? I'm going to make the price ridiculously high. I'm going to make the price so high that it's no longer economically viable for you. But Shay, you still have to buy it because it's a rule, it's a regulation. Here we're seeing the consequence. So what happens for a poor asset manager is he can be offered with two investments. The one is a bond from Japan that's going to give him -1%. Or he can invest in some really cool startup company that's going to have genetically modified, cure cancer, some really cool little private equity technology that promises anything from 10% to 100% return. The asset manager, anyone looking at this deal would be like, well, B is much better, but asset managers are forced to buy the Japanese bond. So one way to take advantage of investment restrictions is to be the person who, is issuing these bonds. So that's exactly what the Japanese government has done. Putting in negative interest rates it's basically like taxing the poor old people. I think it's terrible, but it is a consequence of a poorly thought out regulation, or a regulation that doesn't have. They should have said 60% in bonds, given that bonds have a return above this amount. Otherwise, you can do with the money, you can put it more into equity or something like that. So I think let's blame more the poor regulations rather than the Japanese government. I mean, they're just doing the smart thing here. They're taking advantage of it. Okay, who else takes advantage of investment restrictions? Well, you have the financial alchemists, the good old financial engineers, their creative solutions. And one of their creative solutions, I've also made another video on this thing. It's this crazy thing known as a credit linked note. And this is insane. Basically, what a credit linked note is, I had to do a whole video to explain it, but it's a government bond, okay, packaged with credit insurance, like risky credit insurance, like super risky and not very risky. And what they do is they combine these things together. And you might say, that is so weird. Why don't they just sell the credit risk by themselves? Why are they combining this super credit risk thing with a not so risky government bond? It doesn't make any sense. Until you realize that they're getting around the investment restriction. Because a credit-linked note can be classified, because it's a government bond, yes, it has this little other thing attached to it, but it's classified as a bond. Oh, you have to put 60% into bonds? Well, you can either go and get -1% from Japan, or you can let's have another option over here, this credit-linked note, which gives you either plus 10% or minus 100%. Okay, because those things are absolutely ridiculous. Well, not minus 100, because you've got the government bond part of it. Let's say minus 10%. So it's a very risky thing to do. But as an asset manager, I'm thinking to myself, I either take -1% on the chin, or I do this little gamble, because that's basically what this thing is. It's a sophisticated gamble that's been designed in such a way as to outsmart regulation, and asset managers are queuing for these things, so they're actually overpaying for them because, again, the demand is so huge. But essentially what it does is it allows them to buy this really risky product, which can give them a chance of getting return, but they are risking the poor pensioners' money. So they've bypassed this whole protect the consumer thing by chasing this high return. Because remember, as an asset manager, in some cases, an asset manager, he will lose his job, or funds will be diverted away from him if his returns are too low. If he's less than the benchmark, he's in trouble. So and this is the whole principal agent problem, his main objective is to get money coming into his fund. He doesn't really care about the consumer because he thinks the regulation is there to protect him. So he doesn't have to worry about that. He has to maximize his returns to keep his job. So these crazy credit-linked note things come along that are too risky for pensioners to be purchasing. He's going to take a gamble on it because he enjoys a lot of the upside. He keeps his job. If it fails, well, he loses his job anyway, as if he had bought in the Japanese bond, which was probably going to be less than the benchmark. So that's also crazy. So another way to take advantage of investment restrictions is to create some sort of financially engineered credit-linked note. And then what these guys do is, by packaging it as a bond, because there's so much demand, is they can resell it for more than what they got it for. So they can be pure management. Imagine let me put it simply like this. Imagine saying to people, you can only buy food that's in a black packet. Let's say that's a regulation. You can only buy food that's in a black packet. What these guys are doing with these credit-linked notes is they're buying normal food or other food in different color packets. Let's say 10 Rand. Then they take those packages off, they put it in a black packet, and they say, oh, look, this is a black packeted food. We're now going to charge 100 Rand for it. And they're making money simply by changing the wrapper. And that's exactly what they're doing with these credit-linked notes. They're taking risky credit insurance derivatives and all these crazy things, repackaging it in a special purpose vehicle with a government bond, changes its definition of what the instrument is, bypasses the regulation, asset managers jump onto it, and bam, they've boycotted the investment restrictions. Poor consumer takes up all the risk, and it's quite horrible. Okay, but now how can you take advantage of investment restrictions? Because you don't want to this is I think this should be illegal. Well, it's not illegal. It's very much frowned upon to create credit-linked notes and do that. The Japanese government, I don't think any of us are government, so I don't think we're going to be able to do that. So how do you, as an individual investor, take advantage of investment restrictions. Let me see if I've got any space here. Let me zoom in over here. Okay, as an individual investor, let's say there are two assets. Okay, there is asset number 1 and there is asset number 2. Okay. What we see is that according to rules and regulations, asset 1 meets the criteria. So all the asset managers with their pension funds and their trillions of dollars are going to be feeding their money into asset 1. They can't buy asset 2, they have to push the money into asset 1, which means the price of asset 1 goes up. Okay. Now you have some money and you get to choose which. You can choose because you don't have these restrictions. Do you buy asset 1 or do you buy asset 2? And quite simply, what you should also do is you should also buy asset 1. So I actually do need some more space for this. Let me use a different slide here. Okay, hold on. This is important because it's quite cool. So asset 1 and asset 2. Okay, asset 1 meets regulation approval. Regulation approval, this one doesn't. This one has a starting value, or say a fair value, whatever fair value is, of 10 Rand, and this one also has a fair value of 10 Rand. Because of the trillions and trillions of pension money that's coming into it, the asset 1's price gets pushed up to say 12 Rand after the first year. Okay, and asset number 2, no one really buys, over demand for it, so it stays at 10 Rand. Which one should you buy? Well, you might say, well, of course, asset number 2, I'm buying it at 10 Rand. If I buy asset 1, it's overvalued. Why should I overpay for something? But this is it. The idea is that you too should buy asset 1. You too should pay 12 Rand for it. Why? Because you buy it at 12 Rand this year, but every single year, the pension guys have to keep buying asset 1. They have to keep buying asset 1. These investment rules doesn't give them the freedom to go and buy, asset 2. Say, oh, look, asset 2 is actually, it's quite valuable. Asset 2 starts dropping because no one starts buying asset 2. So it's now undervalued. But because they always have to keep buying asset 1, supply and demand, it's going to push this value up to 14 Rand. Which means if you bought asset 1 at 12 Rand, it's now at 14 Rand and you've made 2 Rand profit. Whereas if you had bought asset 2, you would have lost 2 Rand because no one's really buying asset 2. Well, people are buying it, but remember, these pension funds are so huge that they stuff up the market when they start purchasing things. Because an asset class is considered part of their regulation, these things get over purchased, and what happens is that this price just keeps skyrocketing. 16, 20, it starts going insane. And that's why when we do have a little bit of a scare or a market panic, people are like, but this is crazy. I mean, asset 1 is double the value, double its intrinsic value. This is absolutely nuts. And there's, a flash sale, and the price then goes back down to 10, and there's recession and all that drama and everything like that. But the idea is that because something is fundamentally overpriced doesn't mean you should not necessarily purchase it. Because if you know that the demand for this item or this asset is going to be there every single month because regulation says that pension funds have to put their money in, then it's a much less riskier thing to purchase, because you know that, well, I can sell it at any time I want because there's so much demand for it. And like I said, this causes a bit of a balloon, bit of a bubble, and then it pops, and then it's recession, and it's absolutely crazy. So the whole thing is, and I guess I think this is the last video. Yeah, this is the last video that I am doing on regulation. I'm going to be moving on to theory of finance next. But the whole thing is that regulations, they're good. It's very good, because without regulations, the asset managers would become greedy, and they would, maybe not steal the trillions of dollars, but they will use it for alternative measures. So regulation is important. It's important, and it has good goals, but it has unfortunate consequences. And if these consequences are not addressed, or if the regulation or rule is not changed, then it feeds back and it creates more problems, it creates more market inefficiencies, and this is bad for the general economy, but it's good for the smart people out there who can take advantage of this and profit from it. But anyway, this is very much just my opinion, me talking out loud. Like I always say with these videos, it is just my raw studying. I'm thinking out loud. So always consult textbooks and Wikipedia and all that type of stuff before coming up to your own conclusion. And don't quote anything I say in the exam, because the examiner might have a different view, might be very pro-regulation, and might not see it the same way I do. So yeah, just a little bit of a health warning. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. And the next bunch of videos are going to be on another topic. This is regulation done and dusted. Thanks. Cheers.